very different sense.
Liberation in the vocabulary of communism and Leninism has to do with the overthrow of an exploitive economic system. And that's what the Chinese claimed to be doing in Tibet, where they felt that the old aristocratic and religious authority in Tibet was crushing ordinary Tibetans, and they were getting rid of that and allowing ordinary Tibetans the freedom to control their own lives. They didn't ask the Tibetans if they wanted this done on their behalf, but from their point of view, they didn't have to ask.
There was never any question the Tibetan army could defeat or could hold up a Chinese invasion. They did, however, put up a very brave show. They were fighting for the Dalai Lama, for their country, for their independence.
The Chinese overwhelmed the Tibetans. They slaughtered them. And when they marched into Lhasa in September of 1951, there was no opposition to speak of. They had taken the country whole hog.
The Tibetans themselves must bear some of the blame. Never was there, from the Tibetan government, a firm statement of its independence. They always were looking both ways.
As China redrew its maps, half of the Tibetan homeland disappeared into neighboring Chinese provinces. What was left was renamed the Tibet Autonomous Region.
In Mandarin, Tibet is Shizang, which means Western Treasure House, and the vast animal, mineral, and forest reserves that are on the Tibetan plateau had great appeal to the Chinese communists. Tibet had immense strategic value to China. By controlling the high ground, literally at the heart of Asia, the apex of the Orient, you could dominate the continent.
The five-starred red flag of our motherland flutters high over Lhasa. Under the great banner of our motherland, the Tibetan people advanced to a new and better life.
The Dalai Lama, who was 15 at the time, attempted to cobble together some type of compromise with the Chinese invaders. And his logic at the time, very accurately, was that he should do everything he could to ameliorate the effect of occupation on the Tibetan people.
The Beijing government took over military and foreign affairs, but promised to allow Tibet's religious and political institutions to remain. In 1954, Tibet's highest-ranking religious leaders, the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama, accepted a Chinese invitation to visit Beijing, where they met with Mao Zedong. The Dalai Lama felt the Marxist ideals of equality and social justice might mesh well with Buddhist beliefs. He was impressed with the industrial progress of the Chinese. But his hopes for a constructive relationship with Communist China were dashed when during their last meeting, Mao told him, religion is poison.
When the Chinese first came to Tibet, they were very nice. They were pretending to be good. When the Tibetans went to get water, they helped us to carry that heavy water. When we were working on the farm, they helped us when we were totally exhausted. They repaired our shoes. We all thought the Chinese were lovers of religion. They said they were just guests and would be leaving soon. They just wanted to help us. And if they saw us happy, then they would be happy. Like that, they lied to us.
Once the Tibetan army had surrendered, part of the policy of the Chinese Communist Army was not to pillage and loot. You don't antagonize them unnecessarily when you're establishing your control. There was a period when they sought the reluctant cooperation of the Tibetans.
Implementing communist reforms, the Chinese army began seizing land and property in eastern Tibet and redistributing it to the peasants, much as they had done throughout China.
Problem was, when the Chinese went to a Tibetan village, the landlords were the clergy. And when they attacked the clergy for being parasites because they didn't work and lived off the labor of the others, The people didn't respond in the same way as they would if the army had arrested a rather venial landlord.
When the attacks became apparent on their religion, when the monks were held up to ridicule, when restrictions were put on the monasteries, people became more fearful and began to see the reality of Chinese communism.
They took a rope like this, and then they tied the Lama like this and that. They peed and defecated and threw their urine and stool on the Lama. It greatly saddened us. They raided all the wealth of our ancestors.